So earlier this week, I released an episode entitled On the Couch, where I went through a list of shows and movies I watched on Netflix and then played some tape for my friend Jen on her reflections on COVID-19, aka coronavirus. Then I shared my own thoughts on coronavirus. I also got other friends to submit tape to me, and I thought I would release a bunch of episodes that were half reviews and half reflections on coronavirus. But I don't really want to do that anymore. I do want to keep reviewing. I do want to keep reviewing things, but I don't want this show to be an assessment about our current state. This social distancing is really hard. It's really hard. And it's hard enough without having me come along and try to contextualize it when we're all literally in it right now. Like I think I'm going to need some perspective to really process everything that's happening and everything that will happen and everything that did happen. So I'm going to leave my feedback for the now. I'm going to leave that to my Facebook and Twitter and my Instagram feed. But for this podcast, I'm going to stick to reviews. Just going to stick to reviews. And then someday beyond coronavirus, I might be able to revisit this in an episode of Time Well Spent. Subscribe. I hope that's okay. With all of that in mind, my reviews for now will all be done in accordance with guidance from the CDC and health officials who say stay home. Stay home. Luckily, the production companies are still looking to make money, so they're sending the movies to our homes, which means you're about to get a review of a brand new movie, The Invisible Man, and possibly turn this podcast off and start watching it immediately with all without leaving your own house. So, I'm Ronald Young Jr., and this is On the Couch. All right. Let me adjust my levels here. And I'm sure you know by now, this is Ronald. Wow. I just realized looking at my timer, those credits are almost 10 minutes long. And this isn't even a high budget movie. This is Ronald, and I am on the couch. And I have just watched The Invisible Man, thanks to Universal Studios allowing the movies to be released via streaming services. So I watched it on Amazon Prime. It cost $20. And when you account what I would have spent to watch it in a theater and the fact that I probably could have had people over to my house to watch it, have my own snacks, I can pause and rewind, all that, very well priced considering what you would spend going to the theaters. Now, that being said, I would still go to the movie theater to watch a movie for the experience. I'm a firm believer in being able to go to the movies and being able to experience things on the big screen. But that being said, for the experience of watching it on my couch, well, let me get into the movie and then I'll go back to the experience of watching it on my couch. So, The Invisible Man, written and directed by Leigh Whannel, starring Elizabeth Moss, Oliver Jackson-Cohen, Aldis Hodge, Storm Reid, Harriet Dyer, Michael Dorman. Now, The Invisible Man was originally supposed to be a part of Universal's Dark Universe shared universe of monsters, and it was kicked off with The Mummy, starring Tom Cruise, which came out a few years ago. But that was so bad and so not so ill received that they ended up scrapping that whole plan. So eventually, originally The Invisible Man was supposed to be played by Johnny Depp, and all the people that were involved in it kind of stepped away from it when they saw how toxic The Mummy was. And I'm sure it had something to do with some of the personal struggles that Johnny Depp was having and trying to sell a movie with him in it at that point. So they stepped away, and in sweeps Jason Blum, who is very, very good at turning either little known pieces or very cheap pieces into blockbuster success. Granted, this one might be hamstrung a little by the fact that it's not being shown in theaters, but it is being it is being, I mean, you do have an opportunity to see it. So let's talk about the movie itself. Because I was sitting on my couch, I was able to take notes. So hopefully this episode will sound a little more together than some of the stuff I've done when actually leaving the theater. So first of all, it's a fantastic allegory. So the premise of the movie is that Elizabeth Moss, the main character, her husband is abusive, but he is also a genius in the field of optics and fiber optics, whatever you want to call it. And the movie opens with her trying to escape from him. So she successfully escapes from him. But then 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, it's purported that he's dead. Now, I don't mind telling you this because there's plenty in the movie that is not spoilery, but the name of the movie is The Invisible Man. And we know that it is her husband that is actually, he faked his death. And he is actually torturing her for the duration of the movie. Now, again, I don't mind telling you that because the premise of the movie is that it's the Invisible Man. They tell you this in the previews. We know what's happening. They've established the premise. This is not a surprise. I'm not ruining anything for you. I promise you that does not ruin the movie. As a matter of fact, it makes you watch the movie a different way. And they do something very cool because you walk in knowing that it's an invisible man that's torturing her. And what they've done, and I'm almost positive that they had to use a lot of stand-ins for this, is they filmed the movie in a way that there is another person on screen. So typically when you film a movie, you have one person in the shot. And if there's a second person in the shot, I think they call it a two shot. I don't know what they call it. I didn't go to film school, but if there's two people, they widen out the shot so you can see two people. Well, in this case, you'd see Elizabeth Moss in there, but the camera would be set up like they were filming two people. So it causes you as the audience to kind of look for a second person, even though you can't see him on screen, which is amazing. I mean, that's great use of focus and camera work. There's a few times where they stop focusing, like the camera literally stops focusing on Elizabeth Moss and focuses on nothing in the background, seemingly nothing in the background. But we, the audience, know like, oh no, he's there. He's in the background. So, in terms of, it's very deliberate pacing for that. So it's, the camera moves very slow, a lot of slow things happening, especially in the first act, very slow, very still movie. And it kind of gradually picks up. It's a fantastic allegory because it's literally what they've used is an abused woman, who is telling everybody that all this abuse is happening to her, but people can't see it and they can't believe the circumstances under which the abuse is happening, which is crazy because that's really the story of many people who suffer from abusive behavior from people all the time. Like not just abused spouses, but anyone who suffers abuse from a partner that is charismatic, who is any charismatic that are like sociopaths quietly. I'm sorry, in hiding or in secret. Here you are dealing with this person and I can't see it, but you can see it, so it really is literally invisible. Maybe it's a little on the nose, but watching this, it just really opened my eyes to think about the struggle that people have to face when they have abusers and we can't see the abuse, but they're trying to describe it to you and they're telling you, but in a lot of ways it sounds crazy because the lengths at which an abuser will go to cover their tracks and to make you seem charming and all that to them. I mean, this is something that's real. And with that being said, I would give a trigger warning to anyone who has ever been abused or been in this type of relationship, because you're going to see that in this movie. Elizabeth Moss does a great job of playing an abuse victim, of playing someone who's like, I need all of you guys to believe what I'm saying, but nobody here believes it. So in that case, I would give a trigger warning to anyone who, before watching this, I would say be careful because it's definitely going to hit those. It's definitely going to. I could see it bothering some people. It didn't bother me. I'm not in a relationship like that, but I could see it bothering someone who had that type of experience. Speaking of Elizabeth Moss, great casting. I think she herself elevated this movie a full star, and I'll give my rating at the end. But she herself just being in here, the acting that she does, the way she emotes, the way you can see the fear and like the happiness, joy, whatever she has, the way she emotes is perfect. I was sitting here thinking, I was like, man, she's one of the only people who could have elevated this role like this because one, she's the most known face in this movie. There's a couple of people but she is like clearly the star of this movie. And if they had replaced her with anyone else, I'm sure somebody else could have done an okay job, but in terms of what they needed a strong actor to be able to do a lot of stuff by themselves. Like in a lot of these cases, she's acting alone, or they're putting something in post, you know what I mean? Or they're putting somebody in there and then, removing them. So you have to believe her all by herself. And they really did a very good job. I mean, she does a very good job of standing on her own, and she's a great actress. So that's not really a surprise to me whatsoever, but just thinking about her and thinking about the only other person I think that could have probably pulled this off was Naomi Watts, where you really needed that one person to be there and just to be strong enough to stand on their alone, but believable enough to be believed as this abuse victim, as a person that's going through this extraordinary thing. It reminded me a little bit of Enough in regards to having the J-Lo movie about abuse, but having the charismatic person, charismatic abuser, and the abuse victim who's trying to escape the abuse, but then ends up having to confront it eventually in the end. As a matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, it's a lot like Enough, except adding the science fiction spin on it kind of makes it a little bit more strangely makes the story more believable here than it was in Enough. And Enough only because when it comes to the confrontation and Enough, the way that she gets ready for it, it's like, come on, man, like what are we talking about here? But again, initially we're talking about abuse victims and all of that is in the same vein there. Let's see. Again, they filmed it like he was on camera, got all that. Now, I will say, here's the two drawbacks for me, the two problems that I had that probably wouldn't give it a great score. There's a couple of things that happened in the movie that were very convenient for the pacing and plotting of the movie, but did not service the story at all. They didn't make, and actually, I'm sorry, they were convenient for the story, but they weren't good for the movie. Like sitting here watching it as a filmed experience, there were two things that happened that kind of just took me out of the movie. Like, come on, man. That's like, come on. I'm like, of course I believe it's an invisible man. I mean, and you get me to suspend disbelief by walking into the theater and seeing the title Invisible Man. Yes. Okay. I believe it's an invisible man, but there's a couple of things that the invisible man does in order to scapegoat his victim. And you'll know what they are when you see them. And I watch them. I'm like, no, that's not, come on. Like, how did he do that? Literally. How did he do that? Like, is he also like, is he not only Invisible Man, but is he also a magician? And again, more will be revealed as you watch the movie, but there's just a couple times in there where I'm just like, that doesn't work. But it was for them to service the story so they can get the characters where they needed to be. And I thought that they could have done a better job of that without doing what they actually did. If you want to talk about it, I'm on the couch, so feel free to reach out, text me, call me, hit me up on Instagram and Twitter. I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking after you see the movie, of course. And then it doesn't exactly stick the landing. When it gets to the end, I had some sense of satisfaction, but it wasn't like, I think it could have probably stuck it even harder. This was a movie that was very well executed with a couple of missteps, I would say. But when you get to the very, very end, there's just something about it. I was just like, okay. And it kind of felt appropriate. And I guess that would elevate it a little bit because I'm watching it on my couch. If I were watching it in theater, I think I would have left a little more disappointed. It might have hurt the rating a little bit more to be like, great, now I got to get up, walk out of this theater, walk back to my car. But the idea that I'm just sitting on my couch enjoying the movie kind of makes it just, it kind of makes me a little bit more forgiving in that regard. But yeah, like the ending wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be. Okay. So with all of that being said, I would say this movie is definitely like, go back to talking about watching a movie like this that's filmed for the big screen on your couch. Oh, actually, I want to talk about one more thing, then I'll let you go. So, the sound. You need to turn up your volume because there's a lot of things that this movie does with sound that will be appropriate for a theater. Or if you have a surround sound system, you should be fine. But if you don't have a surround sound system, you want to turn this up a little bit because there's a lot of very high tension things that happen with her and the interaction with him that are all based in sound. So that's important. Even if you could watch it with headphones, that might be even more affecting. But just watching it on the screen, and I had the caption on, so it made it easy to identify that sound was being played, but then I turned it up and it kind of gave it a better experience. So that's one definitely part that you miss from being in the theater, maybe being in that Dolby hearing the things come from around you that would have been like, that it seemed like it was missing. I mean, not missing. It just seemed like it was important for the theater. Now, again, experiencing this on the couch is a totally different experience. Very new, very novel. I like it. I also like going to the theater though. So I don't know if I'm the target market, because I will also get up and go see whatever the new hit Marvel movie is. I'll go see that. But if living with COVID-19, coronavirus, living with that means that we're pushing into a world now where there will be less things shown in theater, or smaller movies won't get a theater release. They'll just get directly put to your streaming services. If we're living in that world, I think we'll live in a world where you might be able to every time justify your trip to the theater every single time you go, because the ones that'll get the wide release are the stuff they're like, you got to go see this in the theater. You got to go see the Marvel movie in the theater. You got to go see the big monster movie in the theater. You got to go see the big action film in the theater. But the stuff that's like all the B movies, the stuff that why do I have to get up for this? But it was a really good preview. But the stuff that they trick you, they trick you into the theater for, you won't necessarily have to go see those. So I'm looking forward to that. If this is in fact where that's going, which I would not be surprised if it is, based on kind of this forced test run we're having with everyone social distancing right now. So yeah, I'd say it's worth the $20. Especially if you're able not to watch it by yourself, but watch it with somebody. I watch it by myself, but if you're able to watch it with somebody, I think it's worth the money, to watch it, enjoy some snacks, heat up some food, wear whatever you want, and sit on your couch, pause it, go to the restroom, whatever. I think it's worth the $20 to do all of that. Can you bring the kids? Can the kids watch? Yes. If they're 13 and up, I think they're going to be fine. There's nothing in here that's like too crazy. There are a few, violent scenes. There's a couple of graphic violent scenes. And I'll put it like this. If your kids watch Game of Thrones, then they can watch this. But there's nothing extremely sexual, in this movie, but there are a couple of violent scenes, but they pass relatively quickly, but they are pretty, impactful. So it depends on how you deal with your kids according to violence and all that. But other than that, rest of the movie, it's pretty easy to watch. They might think it's a little boring, and there's definitely, and it's funny, there's not really like jump scares, which I was surprised. I was expecting a lot more jump scares. There's really not, but there's a lot of tension. So if you're not a person that does well with anxiety and tension, this might not be the movie, especially not right now with us being in the house. But if you're into that, this is definitely the movie for you. All that being said, I would give it 3.5 of 5 stars. This is a movie that would have been a 2.5 if Elizabeth Moss's acting was worse. It probably would have been a 2.5. She drew me in. It would have been a 4-star movie if not for those drawbacks that I mentioned. But because of that, it kind of like, I definitely liked it. I definitely more than liked it. Didn't love it, but I definitely more than liked it. Really liked it. Didn't love it. So yeah, that's it. And I'm still chilling on the couch. I think I'm going to do a little segment. Leaving the Theater is a production of ohitsBigRon Studios. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about this show and other ohitsBigRon Studios shows, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ohitsBigRon. That's at ohitsBigron. If you like this show, check out our sister show, Time Well Spent. Leaving the Theater will be back soon, but until then, I'll be here on the couch.